Hey, would you look at that? First video where I'm using my face. Welcome to what will hopefully be the first in a long list of videos where I'll be discussing albums that A, I love a lot, and B, I have in my library. And first up we have Black Sabbath, Paranoid. So why did I pick Black Sabbath Paranoid? It's a huge, groundbreaking, commercially successful album that is still underrated in my opinion. Just a bit of context for this album. This is the second release that they put out, and the second release they put out in 1970. The self-titled debut came out in February, and this one came out in September, and there is a massive growth spurt from that to this. The song structures on it are impeccable, just constantly shifting from memorable part to memorable part, truly iconic in every sense, and what really holds the stuff together is not only the incredible guitar riffs from the legendary Tony Iommi, not only the memorable lyrics from the primary lyricist, Geezer Butler, or the memorable melodies that Ozzy Osbourne delivers, but on Bill Ward's drumming. Few people realize just how integral the guy was to the band, especially in the early days, because his sense of feel, his propensity to swing instead of just be straight ahead with the drums, and his choice of very tasteful fills, it really just makes these songs flow the way they do. Otherwise, without him, I don't think this album would be nearly as successful as it is. Obviously, he's not the only component, but he's a factor that a lot of people sleep on for this album. Now, I love the early Black Sabbath material, in particular the first 4 albums, but if I had to just really settle down and say which one has the best production, I'm going with Paranoid, because while yes, Master of Reality and Volume 4 do beef up the sound with the more prominent guitars, it does lead to the bass being a little buried, and also for the drums. And on Paranoid, the drums have a lot of space, a lot of feel. You can hear every single cymbal crash, every single tom hit, everything sounds crystal clear. And yes, the guitar tone isn't quite as full as it would be on Master of Reality, but it complements the music very well. It's very atmospheric in a sense. So the album opens up with War Pigs, one of the best songs of this band's career, filled with, like I said, interesting sections and killer riffs from front to back, anthemic anti-war song, and Tony Iommi just doesn't get nearly enough credit for not only the great riffs on this song, but also his solo playing, Bill Ward again, doing interesting drum fills all throughout the song. As much as other songs on this album have become relatively overplayed for me, and I'm a little bit burnt out on them, with War Pigs, that's just not the case. I can listen to this song any time of day, no matter what. It just never, ever gets boring. I'll touch on the lyrics in a little bit, but specifically War Pigs was considered an anthem of the Vietnam era, alongside All Along the Watchtower and Fortunate Son and songs in that vein, and understandably so. It's a terrific anti-war song. The key tracks that everyone would tend to bring up for this album would be obviously the title track, Paranoid, song dealing with mental illness, and is way more straightforward than the other songs on here, not so much revolving around these slow, ponderous sections and tempo changes and all this other stuff. Instead, it's fairly straightforward. It's the kind of classic rock song from the late 60s, early 70s that you'd expect to hear, in the vein of Born to Be Wild, Boys Are Back in Town, You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, just kind of like a fast, up-tempo, fun, driving on the road kind of rock song. It's pretty bog standard. The other key one would be Iron Man, which does form like the kind of the template that the other tracks do. It kind of falls into that vein more. But the riff is very iconic, we all know that. However, the rest of the song, I think, is really underrated compared to that riff. I mean, because you've heard that riff so many times, the da-na-na-na-na, that you think, is that all that the song has to offer? And then when you actually do hear the song in full with all the different sections, that weird, almost like tribal, fast-paced section where it feels like you're running through the jungle, all of these different blues sections, like the gorgeous riffs, the switch-ups, again, the fills, the drum fills, it just is such a complete song. And I think that if you only hear Paranoid on the radio, or if you only heard that one riff, you don't get a good idea of what Black Sabbath are, what they are like. Because a lot of people just think it's pretty bog standard hard rock, you know, kind of in the vein of AC/DC or when Ozzy Osbourne went solo, because like every project that he's a part of, it's mostly the people around him more than it is himself. He's obviously a great stage presence, he's got a very distinct howl to his voice, but ultimately it's what the other band members are doing and how distinct and how stylistically unique and how locked in they are as a unit that makes Black Sabbath special. Lyrically as well, I've got to hand it to them. They really did come out of the park just swinging with songs that are just more interesting than what people would assume it to be, as in just like Satanism and little horror tales. The fictional stories that they tell are actually quite interesting. You have Planet Caravan, the first fully soft song in their catalogue, which deals with two lovers floating through space. You have Iron Man, this sort of post-apocalyptic revenge tale with time travel elements. And then you've got the songs rooted in reality, such as War Pigs, Electric Funeral, dealing with the war, the just general concept of it, and Hand of Doom, dealing with more particular story involving soldiers suffering from PTSD and resorting to drugs, leading to addictions, and ultimately spelling their demise. You have plenty of stories like this, and drugs would become an integral part into the Black Sabbath formula going forward, but already on this album you see little sprinklings of it here and there. Another example being the amazing closer, Fairy Wear Boots, which has a bit of a humorous lyrical nod to it. I mean, the title alone, it speaks for itself, but beyond that, it just pounds, it hits hard, and again, all the different sections work. And as a cohesive whole, you think on paper that these songs would sound jarring, that the actual switch-ups wouldn't really translate well into a songwriting form when you hear them all together, but they work perfectly. All the songs connect and flow off one another. It's just such a perfect album. And while I have a lot of love in my heart for Master of Reality, and I always cited that as my favourite album, I love the Dio years, love Volume 4, and so on and so forth. Really, if I was going to recommend Black Sabbath to anyone, this is the album I'd say you should start with. So there you have it. That is my review of Paranoid. Pretty succinct, because I try to be with this stuff. I can really go on, and I've definitely left some stuff out, but essentially with this series, I intend on making sort of short 5-6 minute videos, just tackling albums that I love, and Paranoid was just the first one up. It's the one that made the most sense. I truly love this album, I really do, and I think it doesn't get nearly enough credit that it deserves. Obviously, like I said, critical darling, very influential, but to most people who only hear the name Black Sabbath, they have an image of what the band is in their heads, and they don't explore any further. What I should say is, if you are into grunge bands like Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Nirvana as well, or if you appreciate bands that are willing to experiment or go outside of like a particular formula, if you love heavy psych, I think Black Sabbath is just as worthy as any band that you listen to in your rotation. I think any classic rock fan can get down with them. Obviously, every metal fan worships the ground that they walk, or any metalhead worth their salt would admit that. And they're a band that I think that even if you don't get them immediately, you should at least just settle in and give them time to work their magic, because they have a particular sound that just, while it has been referenced, it has been imitated, it has not been replicated. Thank you for watching.